Okay, so I've been thinking more about this issue of free will and determinism, and I guess some of the way that scientific explanations have been brought to bear on whether or not one is free. And some people have suggested no, science seems to suggest that people are not free, that it's a materialistic, deterministic world. Other people have come in and said, no, look, there's quantum mechanics and there's kind of indeterminacy that happens at quantum levels. And therefore, people do have a freedom because it comes from this. Okay, I guess first off, I want to say I do think that for those who are interested, a good book would be Daniel Dennett's book, Elbow Room, on the variety of free will worth wanting, where he sort of talks about different meanings of free will. And I don't think that any of us want to say that random fluctuation or just random variation is what we mean when we're talking about a freedom, if by that freedom we mean that kind of freedom that we want and that we want to espouse and we want to align with a kind of rationality and purposeful decision making, things like that. From my own perspective, I'm much less interested in the the scientific arguments in sort of metaphysical issue or some metaphysical frame, and I'm much more interested in those social historical, again, a kind of science, but a social historical, maybe a phenomenology of what could be called the freedom through media determinism. Now, media ecology is a field that I've done a lot of work in. It's one that I would recommend that people learn more about. But one of the criticisms that is sometimes given to media ecology is that it's a media determinism. And people will say, oh, media ecology denies agency, it denies freedom of people. It suggests that the media have an impact independent of what people want or what people do with the particular media. So some people will say that, television has an impact on you regardless of what you watch or how you watch it. It's the medium itself has an effect. That's a media ecological argument, but the criticism often is that they're denying a kind of agency there. When I sometimes hear that, as much as I appreciate and I understand the concerns that people are raising when they give that criticism, I'm much more aligned with the media ecological tradition, and I would sort of defend it, like parry that thrust and say, no, what's happening is you right now are defending a kind of agency that has been made possible by through various communication technology. And it's not that people have always had this thing called agency and then we've added various communication technologies. It's that the human environment, the world that we're in, I mean, the structure of the world that we're in, and the structure of our minds, the structure of our consciousness, our sense of space, of time, of other, all of these things have been radically shaped and transformed by particular kinds of communication technology. And as they've done so, they've revolutionized our notion of agency, of purpose, of decision making, of choice. And so let me just give you an example. In the Holy Oral Word, where the word vanishes and there's no writing, see, the spoken word, it relies upon rhythm and rhyme and repetition, and there's not a lot of tolerance for novelty because there's a great fear of forgetfulness. And that's part of what's sometimes called the oral economy of the sort of oral noetics, that the mind of the holy oral society and the holy oral person is one that is structured with a kind of dependency upon the past and upon others. Now, that's very different than the kind of freewheeling individualism that has been liberated out of collective historical life by literacy. I mean, it's money and calendars and numeracy, and there's other forms of communication technology. And we're not even at the point where we're talking about electric, modern media like the things we're having today, YouTube, these sort of digital technologies that allow us to transmit messages all around the globe instantly. I mean, is again even more radical. But I think what we can see is as we move from the oral word to the written word, and then how the written word again structures the ability to make written down promises, contracts, legal arrangements, and it frees up an individual in a kind of autonomy and an anonymous set of contractual and legal relations. All of these things come out, and for that society and for that individual, they constitute what become domains of agency, of freedom, of decision making, of entertaining capacity, of entertaining possibilities with a reasoning and a capacity to select through a careful deliberation and decision making. See, I think these kinds of processes, they've been made possible by and through communication technologies. And what's difficult here is, I mean, people need to understand some of Ivan Illich's work. I mean, so much of his work is on what he calls, for example, lay literacy. Now, lay literacy is the degree to which literacy affects the society, not just in the individual who is personally literate, but in the structure of the society. Like the fact that there's an arrangement of postal addresses, and there's a organization of goods within grocery stores, and there's a cataloging and retrieval possibilities through alphabetacy. Like if you try to think of the way alphabetacy affects the way that we catalog and do Google search information. I mean, even as you're doing a Google search, the alphabetacy is there, even among those who aren't particularly highly literate. These kinds of effects of literacy have shaped and enabled. They're the set of what we could call the constraints and the enablements for those kinds of free will worth wanting. When I'm interested in the question of agency or freedom, or even what we mean by determinism, I think I would say there is a special kind of determinism, media determinism, which may well be one of the only kinds of free will worth wanting. Okay, thank you.